Hi, how you doing, and welcome back to another video on the channel. What we have for you today is our wildcard video going into Game Week 11, and as you can tell by the title, it is 97% rated with no Haaland. I know a lot of you are planning on taking Haaland out of your team, so whether that's on a wildcard or using free transfers, hopefully this video helps you out and gives you a few different options moving forward. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe, like the video. The support has been awesome so far this season, and honestly, we don't take it for granted. So if you can help us grow even further as a channel, that would be really appreciated. We are recording this video before Sunday's games have kicked off, but if any injuries happen, we will just post alternative players for this lineup in the comments. So let's get on with the team. So as always, we're going to start with the goalkeepers, and might be a bit of a surprise here because we've gone with Sanchez from Chelsea. At 4.7 million, he's neither the cheapest or the most expensive option, but surprisingly, he sits third on most points by all keepers and has made the fourth most saves during that time. So whilst Chelsea have only kept 2 clean sheets so far this season, that's actually the third most out of any keeper, and in my opinion he's got the best run of fixtures all the way through to game week 24, so he could be that set and forget keeper all the way through to your next wildcard and through the busy Christmas schedule. Fabianski looks easily the best 4 million keeper. He's the most likely to actually play. He started the last 2 games, and you're also unlikely to ever want 3 West Ham outfield options, so it doesn't stop you from getting a player in your team elsewhere later down the line. So for me, he's the most obvious choice as a backup. In defence, as is the way with recent times, we've gone with loads of cheap players. The difference in points between the most expensive and the cheapest is so small this season, and with minimal clean sheets in general, it's the best place to save funds, and there's no one priced over 4.8 million in this team. It is worth mentioning for a bit extra, I think Kanate is a great option, but with the high upside in midfield and attack, I think that's where the money should go. Aït-Nouri is the one everyone's talking about, and Wolves' fixtures are hard to ignore. Southampton, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, West Ham, Ipswich and Leicester. I think even on a free transfer, he's worth considering getting. Normally we would say, don't use a free transfer on cheap defenders because there's not much upside, but he actually ranks first in goals and second in assists in all defenders, and he's got 4 attacking returns in his last 5. I think if Wolves can just get 1 or 2 clean sheets, you're looking at really good points hauls for a 4.6 million defender. So I think even if you're not wildcarding, he remains a good option to maybe move from a more expensive defender, and then you can reinvest those funds elsewhere. Whilst Man City have been frustrating of late, I do feel like they need some representation somewhere. Lewis is actually the only Man City player we've got in this team, and he does remain a good option. I think especially now he's had a rest in game week 10, if none of the defenders are scoring points, at least you won't get annoyed that he's taken up less of your budget. It's not like getting Trent in, or maybe an Arsenal defender at the moment who are 6-7 mil. With Lewis, if he doesn't score, you're kind of subconsciously thinking, well, he's not that expensive, so it doesn't really matter. And we attribute the points to pricing, which is right to do. And doing so, it sometimes puts us off these cheaper players. But the difference in points, like we say, isn't that much. Rounding out the defence, I've gone for double Ipswich. Davies has 2 attacking returns in his last 2, and whilst Ipswich might not keep another clean sheet this season, he remains a great attacking option. I think for what it's worth, they also have good fixtures in the next 7: Spurs, Man United, Forest, Palace, Bournemouth, Wolves and Newcastle. Burgess is literally just in there as the cheapest, best third bench option. So we do have double Ipswich defence, but it's really just single Ipswich defence. And also Everton's next fixtures are good, but after that they get tougher. So I think Mykolenko, he remains a cheap option, but someone who's going to play 90 minutes is really important every week, which is who he is and what he does. I think if no one's keeping clean sheets, like we say, the fixtures really matter with defenders. I think it doesn't, the cheap options, whether they're playing Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City, or Southampton, Leicester and Ipswich, if no one's keeping clean sheets, you're probably just going to get 1 or 2 points anyway. So the defenders we've got here do have slight attacking threat. Some of them have really good attacking potential, but I think they're pound for pound the best defenders available for you right now. Into midfield we go, and we're going to start talking about Mo Salah. We've gone with 3 premiums in this team, and he's probably the most consistent point scorer on a weekly basis. Liverpool's fixtures also look good. After Villa, next week they've got Southampton, Newcastle, Everton, Fulham, Spurs, West Ham and Leicester in the next 8. I think if you're not going Haaland, you really have to go for Salah. Palmer is arguably the best FPL option moving forward, and he's got potential for massive returns, which is it's not news for any of us. We know that, but it's still always worth considering in every wildcard team we have moving forward. I think you combine that with Chelsea's fixtures. He's a must-own, or as close to a must-own as you can get. Till January, he has to be in the same bracket as someone like Salah and Haaland as the best premium options. Now, if you've already owned Mbeumo, you'll be saving some money on this team because you won't need to worry about his increase in price. I think he's worth holding if you do already have him, and keeping on a wild card. He's still worth, to bring in. But whether a free transfer, I would get him in, I'm not too sure. I'd probably go for someone like Visser in attack as a cheaper Brentford option, just to balance out those tough fixtures that are coming up. I think right now Mbeumo is a good option on that wild card. Just one Arsenal option in this team as well. So we've gone 1 Man City and 1 Arsenal, which is quite rare, really. There's also only 1 Liverpool in this team, which does go to show that there are some good options elsewhere. And it is Saka. He's still only 25% owned, and he does have good fixtures upcoming. 10 attacking returns in his last 9 games is fantastic, and I'm a big fan of him being the 3rd premium in this midfield. Rounding out the midfield is Bowen. And I know West Ham aren't playing great, but Bowen is still the 7th highest point scoring midfielder. The fixtures are good. He's got Everton, Leicester, Wolves, Bournemouth, Brighton, Southampton in the next 8. And I'll use the Wolves example. Wolves haven't won a game yet, but everyone is saying, get Ait-Nouri, get Cunha, Strand Larsen, and they are great options. But the point is not to overlook West Ham for the same reason. I think if you really didn't want Bowen, you could drop down to Semenyo or Rodgers and swap Mbeumo to Foden for an extra premium. But Bowen is, as you can see on the screen, 9th in expected goals and assists combined, 11th in points per game and 8th in minutes played among midfielders. Now, on their own, those stats maybe don't look great, but I think if you've got a player who is consistently in or around the top 10 for their position with the different stats and the underlying stats, I think that is a really good option to get. And you combine it with the fact that no one's really talking about him. He is going to go under the radar as possible, that big differential player that you can get in for someone who is going to play for West Ham no matter what, and someone who is a massive point of the attack. So up front, I'm starting with Nicholas Jackson. I actually think he's the most underrated forward right now in FPL. He's 4th highest scoring striker, and he's got 9 returns in his last 8 games. So we've mentioned Chelsea's fixtures, but specifically to go through them, after Gameweek 11, they've got Leicester, Southampton, Villa, Spurs, Brentford, Everton, Fulham, Ipswich, Palace, Bournemouth, and Wolves. I think he's really going under the radar because he's not quite a premium price. He's not your top pricing like Watkins and Haaland. And he's not your cheapest 6 million playing strikers that everybody talks about. But for my own personal transfers, for my own team, I'm really considering getting him in. He's actually 5th out of all strikers in the bonus points system, which is not necessarily bonus points scored, but it's the points that add up to create those bonus points. He's doing really well with the things that positively impact the games for Chelsea. He's also 4th in points per game among strikers, which is really good, and 11th in minutes played. We talk about how, Chelsea especially, they rotate. We don't quite know who's going to be playing on the wings, say, but Nicholas Jackson has got that place up front nailed down. Now, Chris Wood keeps scoring, and at this point, on a wild card especially, I think you just go for him. Whilst Forest may not maintain the form the whole season, they're kind of maintaining it until they don't. It's a bit like when players have 4 yellow cards, and you think, they might get a 5th yellow card coming up, someone like Ait-Nouri. Well, until that 5th yellow card comes up, it's not a problem. And until Chris Wood stops scoring, it's not a problem. So you could be waiting forever for him to stop scoring points. In the meantime, especially if you are wildcard and you get him in on a free transfer, I still think he's a brilliant option depending on how your team is set up. But I think he's someone definitely worth a mention in this team. Finishing the lineup, I've gone for Matthias Cunha. If you wanted to save a mil, you could go for Strand Larsen instead, as they're both great. And even though Wolves haven't won, they've been consistent scoring throughout. They've actually scored in every game since game week 1, which is amazing, really, because if you think they've not won, you would expect them not to be scoring, but they have got those consistent attacking returns. So overall, as we said at the start, this team rating is 97%. Shout out to Fantasy Football Hub for their team rated tool. I think it is a bit more on the expensive option. It's 101.2 million, but we have talked about how, you could save $1 million by going from Matthias Cunha to Strand Larsen, or you could also look at maybe, if you've had someone like Mbeumo in your team for a while, you could have saved a bit of money there, or, you could downgrade your 5th midfield option to someone a little bit cheaper and save your money there. Or if you're not going to use your bench, that 4.5 million defender or someone like Mikalenko, you could save a couple of, bit of funds there by just reducing them to maybe a more non-playing defender and having a weaker bench. So in terms of strengths, I think it's a fantastic front 8. The midfield and strikers combined, I think you'd be really hard pushed to find a better 8. You'd probably be able to find a better 6 and then have a weaker 2 remaining players. But as an overall front 8, I don't think I'd question playing any of them at any point for the next few game weeks at least. It also has good bench cover. So, someone like having Bowen off your first bench is almost a problem because it gives you that selection headache. You'd almost want to play with 2 defenders and then play all 8 of those players. So it does require you to be engaged with what's going on and maybe play the fixtures a little more and take a few risks with who's playing who and then benching someone as a result. But I think it's a nice problem to have, and a good first bench option, especially going through the Christmas schedule, is really important because players do get rested, and then if they don't start or don't play at all, you really can be struggling for bench players if you've not got that strong first option. So the weaknesses are, there's no clear way to get Haaland back in. It's going to take at least 2 transfers, and what we've done here is we've spread the funds throughout, so you would be needing to maybe get rid of 1, maybe 2 players out of this front 8 that you do really like in order to go cheaper options to make up the gap, because some of these strikers we've got, it's almost 10 million less than Haaland, so it's already quite an expensive team, and in order to save that 10 million, you are looking at getting rid of one of your 3 midfield premiums and a striker that you like in order to get Haaland back in. So it's really dependent on how you want to play that. I also kind of question whether you can rely on 6 million strikers all season. Whilst they're good in bunches, they're not a set and forget player, although I guess you could argue not many people are. But in a few game weeks, you look at someone like Chris Wood's fixtures, and if he stops scoring, you're going to want to be moving him on, which is okay. But at the same time, you don't really know what injury problems you're going to be having in your team. You need your free transfers just to be as flexible as possible because injuries are popping up now and then. So yeah, that's the team. I think it's quite good. I know it's a little on the expensive side, but hopefully we've covered some alternative options as well. And if you've been keeping track of your team value, that might not be too much of an issue for you. If you've got any questions, pop them in the comments. We'll always get back to you. Please do subscribe, like the video. If you've got anyone else you think I'm missing from this team, let me know as well. Hopefully you're having a good game week 10, and I will see you in the next one.